In this video, we will discuss difference between DOS and Windows, Linux and Windows, Linux and Unix, Unix and Windows and CLI and GUI. What is the difference between DOS and Windows? DOS used a text-based interface that required text and codes to operate. Windows uses graphics, images, and text. DOS is a single-tasking operating system. Windows is a multitasking operating system. DOS supports single processing. Windows supports multiprocessing. DOS does not support multimedia. Windows supports multimedia. You need to type the commands in DOS. There are ready-made commands in the form of menu and can be applied by a mouse click. DOS does not provide plug-and-play facility. Windows provides plug-and-play facility. Networking is not supported by DOS. Networking is supported by Windows. DOS is free of cost. Original version of Windows is expensive. DOS does not need any pointing devices. Windows uses various pointing devices such as light pen, mouse, etc. DOS supports the use of only keyboard. Windows supports the use of keyboard and mouse. DOS is difficult to learn. Windows is easy to learn. There is only one window opened at a time in DOS. In Windows, multiple windows can be opened at a time. DOS operating system is less preferred than Windows. Windows are more preferred by the users in comparison of DOS. DOS consumes less memory as comparison of Windows. Windows consumes more memory. What is the difference between Linux and Windows? Linux is an open-source operating system. Windows is not an open-source operating system. Linux is command-line interface. Windows is a graphical user interface. Linux is developed by Linux Torvalds. Windows is developed by Microsoft. Linux is written in C and assembly language. Windows is written in C++ and assembly language. Linux uses a tree structure to manage files. Windows uses directories to manage files. Linux takes less time to install, but we need professionals for the setup. Windows takes more time to set up, but anyone can manage the installation. Linux is more reliable than Windows. Windows is not much reliable as Linux. No licensing is required to use Linux software. User need license to use this software. Linux is widely used for hacking purpose. Windows does not provide much efficiency in hacking. Linux is based on monolithic kernel. Windows is based on microkernel. Linux has more speed than Windows. Windows has a slow speed than Linux. Linux is less user-friendly. Windows is more user-friendly. There are 3 types of user account: regular, root and service account. There are 4 types of user account: administrator, standard, child and guest. Root user is the super user and has all administrative privileges. Administrator user has all administrative privileges of computer. What is the difference between Linux and Unix? Linux is just a kernel. Unix is a complete operating system. Linux is open source and freely available to everyone. Unix can be only used by its copyrights. Linux is monolithic kernel type. Unix can be microkernel, monolithic and hybrid. Linux belongs to the Unix-like family. Unix belongs to the Unix family. Linux was launched by Linus Torvalds at the University of Helsinki in 1991. Unix was launched in 1960 and released by AT&T Bell Labs. Bash, Bourne Again Shell, is default shell for Linux. Bourne Shell is default shell for Unix. Linux is used in several systems like desktop, smartphones, mainframes, and servers. Unix is majorly used on workstations and servers. Linux is available in multiple languages. Unix is available in English. Linux is written in C and other programming languages. Unix is written in assembly language. The source code is accessible to everyone in Linux. The source code is not accessible to everyone in Unix. Linux supports more file systems than Unix. Unix supports less file systems than Linux. Some example of Linux are Fedora, Debian, Red Bee, Ubuntu, Android, etc. Some example of Unix are IBM AIX Drawn, Solaris, HPUX, Mac OS X, etc. Linux installation is easy and economical. Unix installation is comparatively costlier. Linux offers quick thread identification and resolution. Wait time for the correct bug fixing patch is longer for Unix users. What is the difference between Unix and Windows? Unix is a command-line interface. Windows is a graphical user interface. Unix is a command-based operating system. Windows is a menu-driven operating system. Unix is free and open-source operating system. Windows is licensed operating system. In Unix, users may save 2 files with the same name. In Windows, users may not save 2 files with the same name. Unix systems have limited hardware support. Some hardware could not have drivers available. Windows operating system contains almost all of the drivers for all of the available hardware. In Unix, it is tedious to create a backup and recovery. In Windows, it has an integrated backup and recovery system that make it simpler to use. Unix is not user-friendly. Windows is user-friendly. Unix is more secure as compared to Windows. Windows is less secure as compared to Unix. Unix support multiprocessing. Windows supports multi-threading. Unix uses Unix file system, UFS, that comprise std.err and std.io file systems. Windows uses File Allocation System, FAT32, and New Technology File System, NTFS. Unix is portable. Windows is not portable. In Unix, plug and play is not available. Windows operating system support plug and play. Unix is fully case sensitive. Windows has case sensitivity option. What is the difference between CLI and GUI? CLI stands for Command Line Interface. GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. Command Line Interface enables a user to communicate with the system through commands. Graphical User Interface permits a user to interact with the system by using graphics. In CLI, input is entered only at command prompt. In GUI, the input can be entered anywhere on the screen. CLI do not use any pointing devices. GUI uses pointing devices for selecting and choosing items. CLI consumes less RAM and processing power. GUI consumes more RAM and processing power. CLI needs only keyboard. GUI needs both mouse and keyboard. In CLI, no menus are provided. In GUI, menus are provided. In CLI, users interact with the system using various commands in the command prompt window. In GUI, users interact with the system with graphical elements such as icons, menus, images, etc. CLI is not very user-friendly because the user needs to memorize lots of commands. GUI is relatively simpler to use and is more user-friendly. CLI is relatively faster. GUI is slower. In CLI, spelling mistakes and typing errors are not avoided. In GUI, spelling mistakes and typing errors are avoided. CLI's appearance cannot be modified or changed. GUI's appearance can be modified or changed. CLI offers a higher level of precision. GUI provides a lower level of precision. CLI is single-user operating system. GUI is multi-user operating system. In CLI, the information is shown or presented to the user in plain text. In GUI, the information is shown or presented to the user in any form such as plain text, videos, images, etc. In CLI, syntax is mandatory. GUI is free from syntax. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.